And so I might talk a little bit more about breathing today, or I might not, but maybe if we start with those big sighing breaths. And I've realized that's something that I use a lot in my own practice, and I think probably in teaching as well, is this feeling that we can, when we have a big sighing exhalation, we can soften and release tension. And that's both physical tension and, more internal tension as well. And it can also just help us feel a bit more present, just be in our body. And what I'd like you to do to start in terms of movement is to feel the weight of your head on the floor and let your head roll a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. And I think something else that I was just talking with Bea about, and I've been talking with Cam about a bit this week, is what he calls confirmation pleasures, which is when we do these things that are very familiar, which is often how we start these classes, with these very familiar movements that can give us a great sense of pleasure in their familiarity. So letting your head ease to the right and to the left. Just keeping it comfortable, keeping it easy, noticing how it feels today, not pushing anything. And from rolling your head to the right and to the left, let it settle down in the center, in a comfortable position. And then just for a moment, bring your attention to your breathing and feel a breath come in and feel a breath leave you. It's not necessarily an exaggerated breath. It's just for a moment, we bring our attention closer to our breath and we feel the movement of a breath through our body. And then you're going to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And take a moment to feel the contact of your footprints on the floor and the contact of the back of your pelvis on the floor. And then you're going to start to let your knees tilt a little bit to the right and to the left. So this is a very familiar movement. And, that in itself can be settling, but it also can just tell us a bit about how our body is today. So as your knees tilt to the right and to the left, notice what you feel. So it's particularly around the pelvis, into the hip joints, both, sort of into around the groin. Good. And just a couple more times, let the knees tilt to the right and to the left. And then we're going to come to a movement for the upper body. So that, again, this is all going to be quite familiar to most of you. So it's up to you. If you prefer to lengthen your legs out, you could do, or you could keep your knees bent. So really whichever is more comfortable. But we're not going to move the legs and the pelvis in the next movement. You're going to take your arms up towards the ceiling over your chest, and you're going to make them into a big circle shape. So you're going to interlink your fingers. So it's as if you were holding a beach ball on your chest. And then you're going to start to rock side to side with this circle. So you're rocking your circle a little bit over to the right, a little bit over to the left. And you can take your head with your arms. But what you want to do is keep your circle circular. So don't go so far that it's getting into some sort of strange squashy shape. Keep the rocking quite rhythmic. It's not a huge movement. We're keeping our circle circular. We're letting our head move with our arms, but not our legs. So just leave your pelvis steady. That's nice. So just a few more times, rocking side to side across the upper back. So we're starting to perhaps massage, to ease, to work into that tension which we might feel in our upper back between our shoulder blades. That's nice. Whenever you've had enough, bring your arms down to rest on the floor beside you. And then we come back to feeling a cycle of breath moving through our body. So again, our focus gathers into the feeling of our breath in our body. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then if you lengthened out your legs, bend your knees, stand your feet on the floor again. And come back a few times to letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And that's it. B, I'm just wondering whether you'd like it, you want a bit more distance between your feet. I can't quite see how far apart they are. Sort of, yeah, a generous hip width. Not that I like to say that anymore, but yeah, yeah, just see. Good. Okay, so just a few more times. Let the knees tilt to the right and to the left. Yeah, that's nice. Good. And then again, we're going to settle the legs and the pelvis down. So if you prefer, you could lengthen your legs out. And we're going to come back to another movement for the upper body. This time you're going to take your arms up over your chest and make a triangle with your arms. So your hands are stuck together in prayer pose. Your elbows are comfortably straight. So yes, that's it. Be straight in your elbows. Good. And then you're going to start to rock your triangle to the right and to the left. Don't let your hands slide on each other. Yeah, so keep your hands stuck together. Keep your elbows straight. So again, it's not necessarily a huge movement. If you're going a really long way, Donna, you could stick the whole of your hands together. So get the part, that's it, good. If you're going a really long way, just check that your elbows are not bending. Check that your hands are not sliding on each other. And also check that your pelvis is staying put. Yeah, good. So this one I sometimes find can feel almost a little bit painful in my upper back. So if that's the case, you can always do less. Okay, so we think less is more with these things lying down. Good. Just once or twice more, and then let your arms come to rest. And again, gather your attention into your breathing and feel a cycle of breath move through you. The breath comes in, the breath leaves you. And then once more, if your legs are long, bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And come back to tilting your knees to the right and to the left. And again, just see how it feels. So the idea or the intention or the hope with these movements is that each time we come back to tilting our knees, it possibly feels a little bit easier because we've released the spine a little bit higher up. Yeah, so these are all twisting movements, it's all movements, rotation movements of the spine. And then we feel it's the legs moving from side to side. Good. Pause in the middle for a moment and cross your arms over your chest. So as if you're giving yourself a hug with one arm on top. Good. And now come, so you're letting your elbows and your knees and your head all rock in the same direction. So all over to the right and then all over to the left. So it's a bit different now. You're sort of rolling more from side to side across the back of your body. So it's a sort of slightly different feeling. It's no longer a twist. Yeah, it's this sort of rocking from side to side movement. And it might be that you're doing quite a large movement, or it might be a small movement. So again, it's really, yeah, whatever feels right for you. That's nice, Tracy. And from here, you can do a couple more times rocking from side to side. And then you're going to rock all the way over onto one side, whichever feels you feel more drawn to going to. And have a few breaths on your side. You can release your arms at that point. You might want to put one arm, you know, under the side of your head, make a little pillow. And have a couple of breaths on your side, just letting yourself contemplate the prospect. We're coming over onto hands and knees. So that's it. So yes, when you're ready, come to hands and knees. And settle yourself on hands and knees. Just a normal hands and knees position with your hands under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. And we're going to come to some cat movements here. And what I'd like you to do just in cat today is to focus on the movements and let your breath just flow in and out as it wants to. So We can do cat, paying quite a lot of attention to our breathing, but here I'd like you to pay attention to the movement and let your breath do what it wants to do. So it's fine. And if you find yourself, naturally coordinating the movements with your breathing, that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong way to do that. So we can dip our spine down to the floor and we can round our back up towards the ceiling. And I suppose what I find helpful in these is just to notice how my spine is responding, how my lower back feels, particularly when I round up. And when I dip down as well, how easy does it feel to tip my tailbone up? When I'm rounding up, how easy does it feel to tip my tailbone down? How does it feel in the upper back and the back of the neck? How comfortable do all these places feel? We're going to take this into a little bit of rocking forwards and back. So it might be that just for a moment you want to sit back over your heels and give your hands a shake out and take the weight off your hands for a moment. And then again, I would say with your feet flat, but you could have your toes tucked under. You're going to be rounding in cat, staying rounded to rock back over your heels, and then dipping down to come forwards. And again, I'd like you to do this for a few cycles where you're just focusing on the movement and you're letting your breath do its own thing. And then maybe we'll bring our attention a little bit more to the breathing in a moment. So rounding up, staying rounded to rock back, dipping down to come forwards. Dipping down. And when you're dipping down, I'm slightly bending my elbows, but not. Bee is waving her hands. I can't hear you, Bee. Oh, sorry, I'm not big, am I? That's it. Sorry, I haven't spotlit myself. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, are we there? Good, brilliant, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so what I'd like us to do now is just to think a little bit more about our breathing. So we're going to coordinate this movement with our breath. So from hands and knees, you're going to have an inhalation here. We're basically going to move as we breathe in, breathe out, sorry. So you're going to breathe in, hands and knees, doing nothing. As you exhale, you're going to round your back to the ceiling and rock your hips back over your heels. When your hips are back over your heels, breathe in. And then as you exhale, move forwards, dipping your spine down. Okay? And then breathe in, back on hands and knees. Exhale, round your back to the ceiling, stay rounded, rock your hips back over your heels. Breathe in back here, and then exhale to let your spine dip down a little bit as you come back to hands and knees. So try that maybe twice more. Breathe in on hands and knees. Exhale to round your back to the ceiling, look back behind you, keep breathing out as you take your hips back. Rest for a moment, receive your in-breath, and then exhale to let your spine dip down towards the floor. Now this is not, we'll do this one more time, rounding up, rocking back, breathing in when your hips are back over your heels, and then exhaling to drop, dip down, as you come forwards. And then one more time, round your back to the ceiling, stay rounded, and this time as you exhale, rock all the way back into child, or if you prefer, into kneeling. And so that is just one, that's not how you should breathe in that little mini sequence. It's just one way that you could explore your breathing. So in child pose or kneeling now, I'd just like you for 2 cycles of breath to gather your attention into your breathing. You're not doing anything to your breath now. You're just trying to feel the breath, the movement of the breath in your body. So feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leaving you. back onto hands and knees, and we're going to come up into standing through dog pose and a forward bend. So you might want your hands quite wide apart on hands and knees. We can tuck our toes under. We're going to, when you're ready, and I suppose I do often say on an exhalation, you can rock your hips back and then up into dog. And just, you know, see how you feel in dog once you arrive in this first dog pose. We're going to do a bit more dog later on. So we're going to come into a forward bend in a moment from this dog. So just have a little taste, you know, get a little taste of how dog pose feels. And then we'll come back and do a bit more later on. So from your dog pose, you're going to walk your hands in towards your feet, come into a forward bend. Again, you can have a couple of breaths in your forward bend, see how it feels. We'll be doing a bit more, a few more forward bends. And then either walk your hands up the front of your legs if you need to support your back, that's right, Tracy, or let your arms hang and roll up into standing. Very nice. So we're up in standing. It's nice to see the sun again today. Let's just do this one where we swing our arms, just a sort of loose, easy swinging twist. It does really, you know, we have these days, so we're really feeling a little bit spring-like, and then have to remind myself it's still only February. Easily have snow again. Good. So a few more times, that's really nice. Swing your arms, just let everything move. Good. Fantastic. And we'll do a few things in standing. We're going to do a little bit of balancing. A few other things. So come and settle your feet down so they're a little distance apart. And we're going to do this movement where we shift our weight forwards onto the balls of our feet, and then we bring our heels back down onto the floor. So let's just do this a few times, coming up onto the balls of the feet, bringing the heels back down. That's it. Good. Good. So in a moment, we're going to see if we can stay here, up on the balls of our feet, and let our arms float up, and see if we can, you know, see how steady we can feel. So when you're ready, let yourself come forwards onto the balls of your feet, and then stay there and let your arms float up. Let your shoulders soften and drop away from your ears, and see how it feels, if possible, to have a few breaths here. And to feel sort of quiet through the front of the body. And again, as much as possible, it's probably when we're balancing, it's maybe a little bit harder to bring our attention to our breathing, to really feel the breath, because there's other things going on too. When you come down, you're going to let your heels come down and sweep your arms around and come all the way into a forward bend. You can bring your elbows onto your thighs, so bend your knees a little bit if you like, or you can release your arms to the ground. So coming back into another forward bend and seeing how it feels and doing what feels, you know, right for you just now. Knees bent if you like, elbows on your thighs, or flopping down. Releasing the arms to the floor. Whatever you're doing, try and let your head go, so the back of the neck gets that chance to release. And the shoulders are soft. Good. And then we're going to sink into the heels, roll back up into standing. And we're going to do that same balance again, and we're going to use this mudra, this Hakini Mudra. We're going to bring our hands into it over our heads and then bring it in front of us. And I suppose I really do find these mudras helpful for me in balancing, because they take my focus away from my wobbly feet. So let's see how we get on. So we're going to do exactly the same thing when you're ready, bringing your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet. And once you're steady there, then letting your arms float up. And then we have this really interesting movement where we're bringing the pads of the thumbs and fingers to touch over our head, and we can't see what's going on. We have to do it by touch. Then we can soften the shoulders. Good. We can have a breath or two with the hands over the head, and then we can bring the hands down in front of the chest. And I quite like to have my elbows out to the sides, but you could let your elbows come down, that's fine. And you're trying to feel that you've got this domed shape in your hands and the pads of the thumbs and fingers touching. Good. Very nice. So see, yes, everyone looks like they're balancing really beautifully. So certainly, come down and have a shake out when you want to, but certainly I found maybe it just takes away that anxiety about sort of wobbling feet, but I certainly found it a lot easier to balance with my hands in that position. Now, let me just check what we're doing. Yes, settle your feet back down again, so they're a little distance apart, and bring your hands into prayer pose in front of you. That's nice. And then from here, we're going to let breath come in. And as we exhale, we're going to take our arms down and then up. Let a breath come in here. Let the shoulders drop away from your ears. And then let your arms swing in front of you. Just let your breathing be free. So just breathe. Let your body breathe. Good. And from here, you're going to swing your arms all the way to giving yourself a hug with your right arm on top. I'm telling you which arm to have on top, so then you don't have to remember which one you've done. And from here, we'll come on into our eagle arms. Yes, this one, I think that's it. We all know and love. Good. So in your eagle, we're going to take our eagle arms into a forward bend. And I always think it works better if the feet are a bit wider apart. So if you like, step your feet a bit wider apart. Sink into your heels. Tracy, you might find that you want to release your arms and fold so you can take your elbows to your thighs. Just sort of see how you get on. Yes, you're going to fold forwards. Again, I quite like to bend my knees in this one. And just when you've gone forwards, you can either keep your arms crisscrossed and eagle, or you can release them to the ground, whatever you prefer. But keep very rooted into your heels. Keep your knees as bent as you like. And again, Tracy, yes, or anyone else, if it's better for you to rest your elbows on your thighs, then do that, depending how your lower back's feeling. And just have a breath or two in the forward bend. We're going to then, if you haven't released your arms, do so. So you roll up with your arms just hanging, or you walk your hands up your thighs. And when you end up in standing, stay where you are with your feet the slightly wider distance apart. So we can come into these side lengthening movements. So in this, we can, I probably say this every week, but we can either move in and out of it, or we could stay in it and breathe. So maybe as we're focusing a bit more on breathing today, we could stay here and see how does it feel to breathe. I often find it quite hard in this one. So when we breathe in this, we feel even wider through the side ribs. And we exhale and we can give away the bottom arm. We could do the same on the other side. So let the breath come in. So you can feel quite strong through the side of the body. Exhale, give away the bottom arm. And then yes, we can release those ones. Come back to feet being a smaller distance apart. So I think, as I've said, I'm trying to avoid this hip width apart, but that's, you want just the feet to be beneath your pelvis. Hands back into prayer pose. Maybe just take a moment before we swing our arms again to close your eyes, to feel your footprints on the floor, to feel the contact of your hands. And to again, just see, can you also feel the movement of your breath in you, your natural breath? The in-breath flowing in, the out-breath flowing out. Let a breath come in and then open your eyes, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let a breath come in, let your shoulders drop away from your ears, and then just swing your arms. And at this point, we maybe then just let the sort of focus on our breathing move a little bit towards out of the foreground of our awareness, and we're feeling this swinging movement of the arms, trying to let the arms feel really loose and free. And this time you're going to swing your arms through and give yourself a hug with the left arm on top. And at this point, drop your shoulders down away from your ears. And then when you're ready, come on into your eagle arms, which again, I'm showing you, but I think you all know this one. Good. And we can step the feet a bit wider apart, and we can come back into that forward bend with our arms and eagle arms, or of course releasing them if you need to. And again here, I find it quite helpful to have my knees a bit bent. Let the head go, let the arms go, let everything tumble forwards. Yes, you can keep your arms crisscrossed or you can release them. And of course, rest your elbows on your thighs if that's better for you. Good. Maybe have one more big sort of exaggerated out breath, a big sighing exhalation here, where we can just release a little bit more tension. And then sink into the heels, roll back up into standing. And as we've got our feet this distance apart, just one last time, revisit these side lengthening movements. And again, you can choose whether you want to stay and focus on your breathing, or whether you want to move from side to side and your focus is then a bit more on the movement. How does it feel to shift? You don't have to, but how does it feel to shift the pelvis? And the weight shifts into one leg as the pelvis shifts that way. And we're long through the side of the body. Okay. Let's just do a little bit more balancing, and then we'll come back to some more dog pose type things. So this time we're going to be coming to stand on one foot with some sort of mini balances. And I think I'm going to show you just the sequence we're going to do. It's really familiar with some of you, but and you know what's coming. So first of all, we're going to slide one foot back and do a few things there. And then from the foot being back, we'll bring it into tree. And then we'll bend the standing knee and cross that foot over into sort of eagle legs. So you could start with your hands in prayer pose and keep them there. You could let your arms hang and bring your hands into prayer pose at some point during the sequence. So I'll leave that up to you actually. So let's start by, actually release your arms if they are in prayer pose, because I want you to start by choosing which foot you're going to stand on. So close your eyes and just do a little bit of swaying from side to side. So I know we often do this, and we probably often choose the same foot to stand on. Maybe not always. So from swaying from side to side, just see if you can get a sense of which foot you feel more drawn to standing on. Then you can open your eyes, and then if you want to bring your hands into prayer pose, you can do to start with. And you're going to then shift your weight onto your sliding foot and slide the other foot back behind you. And then flip onto the top of your toes. And what I'd like you to do is just, can you sort of tap your toes on the floor so they just come up off the floor ever so slightly. You can do that. And you can then just let the toes come down onto the ground, and then can you straighten that leg without your foot cramping? I don't know, I always find that quite hard. Good. And then you're going to slide your toes back in under your pelvis and let your knee turn out a little bit, and your foot's going to come into your ankles, so we come into tree pose. And it might be at this point you want to bring your hands into prayer pose if they're not there already. So just a couple of breaths in this little mini tree pose. And then let your toes come down onto the floor and bend your standing leg knee, and then cross the other leg over it. Good. Your big toe could even go on the ground if you feel a bit unsteady here. And at this point, if you feel very steady, you could see what it's like to take your arms up to the ceiling. Keep sort of dropping the tailbone, keeping quiet through the front of the body. Good. Very nice. Lovely. Yeah, so to come down, because obviously when we do these little sort of sequences of balances, we're there for a little while. So we can get a bit more tired. We can also maybe surprise ourselves how long we can balance for. Let's try the other side. So you can take your hands into prayer pose if you like, or you can add the prayer pose in a bit later. So let your weight come onto side two, foot two. Come onto the ball of the other foot, slide that foot back behind you and flip onto the top of your toes. And then you do this, just sort of, can you bounce your toes on the floor? Pick them up. Not a huge bounce, but just pick them up and down. You straighten that back leg. How does that feel? And then let that foot come back in under your pelvis. Let the knee come out a little bit. Hands maybe come into prayer pose. You could still keep some toes on the floor, or the foot could come completely onto your ankle. Visit your tree pose for a breath or two. And then we let the toes come back onto the floor. We bend our standing knee. And at this point, sometimes I find it helpful to bring my gaze a bit more down on the floor rather than straight ahead. That can help the knee bend a bit more comfortably. And then cross your top leg over. At this point, you could keep your hands in prayer pose, or you could see what it's like to let your arms come up to the ceiling. And yes, if it's possible to sort of have a little sighing breath or two, just to really soften the shoulders, then that could be helpful if it doesn't make you topple over. Good. Nice. Lovely. And then come down, shake it all out, let it go. So we're going to come to the back of the mat. We're going to come into a forward bend and dog pose. We're going to do a sort of a little bit of a mini sequence with some dog poses. So we're going to go forward bend dog pose. We're going to work our feet a bit in dog, rolling onto the top of our toes again. And then we're going to come from dog back into a forward bend and down through a squat. So don't think you have to remember that. I'm just saying that so you know what's happening. So you could start with your hands in prayer pose at the back of your mat. We can let a breath come in. We can exhale, take the arms down and then up. Feel long and tall, let a breath come in. And then curling forwards as we exhale down into the forward bend. And you might want to stay in your forward bend for a cycle or two of breath, just feeling the movement of the breath through your body. And then whenever you want to, you're going to walk your hands forwards into dog pose. And when you're in dog pose, we're going to work the feet. So in this way, where 1 foot at a time, we come onto the ball of the foot. We roll through the tip of the toes onto the top of the toes. And we just do this, perhaps, a couple of times on each side. So roll, come onto the ball of the foot, the tip of the toes, the top of the toes. So we're really working the feet. And yeah, sort of it's a similar movement to what we were doing in that balance when we come onto the top of the foot. Obviously, don't do both feet together because it would be rather agonising. And then when you've done that a couple of times on each foot, maybe just have a couple of quiet breaths. One quiet breath in dog, just how is it to be in dog? Or a louder breath, a sort of sighing breath, that helps you settle in dog. And then you're going to walk your hands back in towards your feet. So come back into a forward bend. And from this forward bend, we're going to be bending our knees. You can't have your feet parallel. So when your knees bend, they're going to bend straight forwards over your feet. So we're coming down into a squat. And it's fine if your heels come up. And in fact, we'll all be bringing our heels up. So it's absolutely fine. So if you want to stay in your squat, if it feels helpful for your lower back, you could stay for a breath or so. But what I'd like you to do from your squat is to roll through the fronts of your feet to your best ability and come onto hands and knees. And from here, we're going to come back into dog pose. And if you like, you can do some of your one-legged dogs. So I think you all know those, but if you're not sure, I will demonstrate. So if you know what you're doing with your one-legged dogs, you can go straight ahead and do that. Otherwise, you can tuck your toes under. As you exhale, rock your hips up and back in dog. And we've got these explorations. So it's quite nice if you're taking a foot off the floor to start with your knee bend and then to lengthen into your heel. You can have your pelvis level. You can roll your raised leg hip towards the ceiling. You can really stretch into your heel. That's what I like. And you can also bend that top leg and let the foot sort of fall back away behind you. And of course, you can do the same thing on the other side. And yeah, just it's a little bit of a play around. So if you do something and it doesn't feel great, then you just don't stay there. And all of it is about a movement rather than trying to hold something. Very nice. And from here, when you've done this on both sides, you could then just come into a normal dog, but then you're going to fold down into child. And I'm just going to go and grab my drink of water. So fold into child from your dog. So child pose or kneeling, yes. And just while we're there, again, this opportunity to gather our attention into our breathing. Maybe just a cycle of breath. Can you feel the breath coming in? Can you feel the breath leaving you? And if you're in child pose, you can then lengthen, sort of reach forwards a bit on the floor with your hands. So your elbows come off the ground. And you're then from there going to come up onto hands and knees. And it should mean that you end up in this longer hands and knees position. So your hands are further forwards than your shoulders. And if you need to adjust it at this point, that's fine. Because I just want you to start this rocking forwards towards face up dog. And if it's, if face up dog is something that comes quite easily to you, it might be that you go all the way into face up dog. Or it might be that you're just starting to explore taking the weight into your arms. How does it feel to let the pelvis start to come forwards? So, the front of the pelvis opens. So just do a little bit more of that, and then we'll do something else, and then we'll come back to this and go a little bit further towards face up dog. So don't feel this is the only chance you're going to get, but also don't push it if it doesn't feel you're quite ready for it. Okay. Maybe just before we move on, sit back over your heels or be in up kneeling, give your hands a shake out, and even bring the backs of your wrists together, because it asks quite a lot of the wrists, that one. It's quite a deep bend. Now, let's, from hands and knees, bring one foot forwards into lunge. So we've stepped our foot between our hands. We're going to tuck our back toes under and walk that back leg away behind us. And we're going to have a few breaths in lunge. So in lunge, it's one of those sort of super stretchy positions where it is really helpful, I think, to focus on the out breath, to maybe exaggerate the out breath, to just really help us soften and release into this. And today we're going to be moving on into our lunge twist from here, which I think we all know, but I'll talk you through. So in the lunge twist, we keep the opposite hand to foot. Yeah, that hand stays on the floor. And we're turning towards our front leg. Yeah, so that the same arm as front leg can come onto the back of your pelvis. And at any stage you could stop with this. So in this we've come into a nice twist. That might be enough. If you want to go a bit further, you have your back toe tucked under and you pick your back knee off the ground and you really stretch your back heel away from you. And you're still turning towards your front leg. That's the crucial thing to remember. And then your top arm could sort of reach forwards. Forwards is sort of in the opposite direction to your heel. So we've got this long line, long diagonal line from the heel to the front fingertips. Yes, the back heel, rather. The front hand reaches in the opposite direction to the back heel. Good, very nice. And then yes, untwist. Let the back knee come down, untwist. You're going to untuck your back foot and you're going to ease back in this sort of easing back out of lunge movement where the chest stays close to the thigh. And we look back towards the foot, the back foot. Good, very nice. So we're going to do the other side. I'm going to turn around so I don't end up turning away from you. So we're going to be stepping the other foot forwards into lunge. The other foot comes forwards. It might be at this point we think, okay, I could walk my back leg away a little bit more. So tuck the toe under in the back foot, walk the back leg away. We've got our front knee over our front heel. We'll have a couple of breaths in lunge, and it's really up to you whether it's helpful for you to exaggerate your out breath, or whether you just want to feel the movement of the in and the out breath through you. Just bringing our attention to our breathing can help us soften without exaggerating the breath, because it means we're not holding our breath. And then we're going to plant our hand down on the floor. So that's the opposite hand to foot. And we're going to start to turn towards our front leg. And our hand can come onto the back of our pelvis. So what we want to try and feel as we move it further into this pose is we keep turned in the ribs and the chest towards the front leg. So if you like, you can tuck your back toes under, let your back knee come off the ground, stretch your back heel away from you, and then reach your top arm forwards in the opposite direction to your back heel. So we have this long diagonal from our fingertips to our back heel. And you know, it's not always that easy to breathe somewhere like this, but we want to, as much as possible, we might need to make a little effort to feel the movement of the in and the out breath. And then we can, of course, let the back knee come down, untwist, untuck the back toe, ease back into that easing back movement. Chest stays close to the thigh, look back behind you. And then I think after that, it might be quite nice just to come into, I say, sort of a quiet dog pose. Yeah, so to come into dog pose, see how it feels. And if you can, in this dog, just sort of be a little bit quieter and focus on your breathing a bit more. So I suppose I usually use the out breath to move into dog, tucking the toes under, exhaling as I rock my hips back over my heels. And then arriving in dog and just seeing, you know, your knees can be as bent as you like. Is it possible to sort of just open and settle in dog pose? And it's fine, you might be exaggerating your breath, you might be breathing out through your mouth if that's helpful. Or you might just be feeling the movement of the in and the out breath through your body. So maybe when we exhale, we can sink a little bit more into the movement. Maybe when we breathe in, we rise a little bit away from the movement. Obviously coming back down, maybe sitting back and kneeling. Your hands to shake out. So we're going to come onto hands and knees. We're going to do some tail wagging movements, and then we're going to use our tail wagging movement to move into face up dog. So when you're ready, come onto hands and knees and remind yourself of how it feels to wag your tail, or imagine, as it wag your tail, imagine you have a tail and you're wagging your tail. Or you're swishing a tail. It could be a sort of fish's tail. I never tend to think about cats' tails here, because I always think like cats are swishing their tail, it's because they're not very happy about something. You could also do this movement by swinging your lower legs from side to side. So sometimes it's helpful to do that, just to really, you know, this is the movement we're looking for. One side of the body is shortening, one side is lengthening. But obviously when we're moving into face up dog using this tail wagging movement, we're not swinging our legs. So just before we come to face up dog, if you were swinging your legs, stop. And just see if you can move your pelvis without swinging your legs. It's that side to side movement. And again, you might want to just sit back over your heels, give your hands a shake out, because we're then going to come to our longer hands and knees position. Back where we were a little bit a ways ago. And so we're going to use this movement of the pelvis moving side to side to take us back towards child. and then forwards into face up dog. And I think I'm always reminded when I do this of when I've seen nature documentaries of snakes moving through the desert and this sort of side to side movement that they make. And I'm not terribly keen on snakes, but that is the sort of movement we're looking for. This, yeah, sort of a side to side movement that takes us forwards and back. And I think I'd like you, if it feels okay, to maybe 3 times move into face up dog. And then, you know, the third one, it might be where you stay for a couple of breaths. And if we were thinking about the breathing with face up dog, I would probably say that I'll be exhaling into face up dog and then enjoying that sort of really feeling of expansion in the chest of the in-breath when I'm in face up dog. But it might be time to fold into child pose now. And settle down. Good. So I wanted us to do a little sequence before we lie down, a little sort of sequence in sitting, sort of hips, a bit of pinwheel, a bit of pigeon. So as time is moving on, I think we'll move through these things, but we might just not stay anywhere too long. We're going to start with our legs long and wide. And you could be leaning back on your hands. So we're going to come to this position. And you don't have to be, again, you don't have to be really wide with your legs. Just, you know, choose where feels most comfortable. And I thought we will keep coming back to this wide place between some other movements. So you can be leaning back on your hands. If you're someone who's very happy in this and quite likes leaning forwards, then obviously you can do this. That's all, yeah, just wherever you're happiest to start with. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to bring our feet into cobbler pose, but see if you can do that leaning back on your hands without using your hands to move your feet in. So can you slide one foot in? Can you slide the other foot in? And come into cobbler pose. That's it. And then in cobbler pose, exactly, Rosie, let's do a little bit of rocking from side to side. And that's nice. See how that feels. Good. And then from cobbler pose, we're going to move on into pinwheel. So we'll let one knee come on top of the other knee, and we'll slide this top leg back. And what we'll do today, because I'm slightly speeding things up a little bit, we're going to do some circling in pinwheel, but we won't come into the pinwheel forward bend. We'll move straight on into pigeon. So if you're circling in pinwheel, it could be little movements, or if you're someone who quite likes to sort of do a bigger sort of sweeping around movement, that's also possible, but don't feel that you need to do that, because for me, I do quite like these little movements. They just really feel that they're helping to undo my, undo the hips, the pelvis, the lower back. And then from here, we're going to take this knee back a little bit. So I always think I take my knee back so it lines up with the long edge of my mat. But it's more that we're just taking that knee so it's sort of pointing straight forwards. And if we lean a little bit over that leg, we can then lengthen the other leg back out behind us, maybe even tuck the toes under. So as I say every time, you can keep your weight sort of off to the side, leaning over this bent leg, if that's better for your knee, or you can roll over so your pelvis becomes a bit more level. You can always check the back of your hand on the back of your hand on the back of your pelvis. And just make sure that, you're in a sort of pigeon that is comfortable for you. And in pigeon, breathing is very important. I always feel that I need to do big sighing breaths. Sometimes we do our buzzing breath in pigeon. We could actually now have a cycle of buzzing breath and just see if that helps us to settle in pigeon. So be however's comfortable. I'm on my elbows. You could be a little bit lower if you like. Let a breath come in. And if you've had enough of pigeon, roll out and come back into your long, wide legs. I was just going to show you a little twist you could do in pigeon where we keep one hand in the centre, so we've come up a little bit. And then with the other hand, we just move from side to side. And what you're doing is reaching back towards your back leg with one hand. And yeah, so it depends, yeah, if you're still happy in pigeon. And if you're really happy in pigeon, you could be bending your back knee and reaching back to touch your foot. But these are just all sort of possibilities. Exactly, Donna, yeah. So don't do these if they're, you've had enough pigeon and you're desperate to come out. We'll roll out of pigeon, exactly, and come back to sit with our legs long and wide. And so this one it's just really good for the knees. And I've been having a bit of a sort of creaky knee on one side. And when we sit and we let our legs lengthen out, it just lets the knees come into neutral. So again, if you're someone who's happy folding forwards a little bit, make sure your pelvis is coming forwards. That's really important. Let's just let the legs lengthen out for a moment. And then we'll come back into Cobbler Pose, and then we'll finish coming here, and you can have a little bit longer in your wide sitting if you like. So again, leaning back on your hands, can you bring one foot in? Can you bring the other foot into Cobbler Pose? And then in Cobbler Pose, we can do a little bit of rocking. And we can also do the sort of side lengthening one. This is where we lean to one side and then the other, and you can take an arm up. So it helps us to settle in a different way. So the pelvis and the legs are not moving so much. We're leaning our body from side to side. You don't have to take the arm up. You could obviously just lean from side to side. But actually, it's probably nicer with the arm up. Right, let's move on to pinwheel on this side. So we'll let the knee come on top. Slide the top leg back. And we'll come to our pinwheel circling. And so just remember that you can circle in any way. So you can keep it small, but if you want to sort of do some, low sort of swooping around movements, you can do those as well. Which comes a bit more towards that pinwheel forward bend. Little movements up here. And then from pinwheel, we'll be moving on into pigeons. So we're going to let this knee come back a little bit. So in pigeon, we want our knee to be going sort of straight forwards, not in, not out, just straight forwards, or even say slightly out, but out. And then let the weight lean over that bent leg, and we start to lengthen the other leg back behind us, even tuck the toes under. Just tucking the toes under to walk the leg back. You don't need to keep the toes tucked under unless it's more comfy. And then again, just decide whether you're going to stay a bit sort of with your weight over your bent front leg, or whether you're going to roll your pelvis over so the back of your pelvis becomes a bit more level. And find a place where you can settle and soften and breathe. It could be on your elbows, it could be folding a bit lower, taking the back of your head, taking your forehead to the back of your hands or the floor. And we'll have a long cycle of buzzing breath here and just see if that long out breath can help us to settle in the pigeon and soften. So let the breath come in. If you've had enough pigeon, obviously at this point you can roll out. If you want to explore your little pigeon twist where you walk your hands in, and just make sure, you know, make it sort of easy, reaching one hand back, touching your back leg, or bending back knee, touching your back leg. So it's entirely up to you how long you stay in pigeon. And when you've had enough pigeon, you're rolling out and you're letting your legs be long again. And so I'm going to give you a little choice at this point. So you could sit with your legs long and wide for a little bit longer, or you could take this into lying down and taking your legs wide. You know, it might be that you can catch your big toes or your shins, or you can rest your elbows on the floor. See what it's like to go in the back with your legs wide. And obviously, yes, so everyone's going to be on their backs. I think. Good. No, Alison, you're there and sitting. Good. So and just choose, and you don't have to. If you go on your back and take your legs wide, and you think, oh, I'm not keen on that. We've got all these other variations, haven't we? We can do our happy baby. We can fold our knees into our chest. Yes, so I know that's always a popular Friday morning option. So let's take it. Maybe if we do a couple of other things and then go back to legs a bit wide. So we can fold our knees into our chest. We can rock with our knees folded in towards us. And then we take our knees wider, keep the knees bent, but take the soles of the feet towards the ceiling. And then catch the ankles around the back of the knees or the toes and do our happy baby rocking from side to side. We reaching one foot up to the ceiling and then the other. You can also do a little bit of cobbler pose on your back, you know, holding your ankles, holding your feet, a little bit of rocking from side to side in that. Yes, and then exactly, then you could revisit your wide legs on your back if you like. Oh, very nice. Yeah, that's Helen. I like that way you're holding around your legs. That looks really, really nice. Yeah, holding around the, yeah, it's lovely. That's great. I think it's, you know, if you find a way that works for you to hold on to your legs, so that looks, yeah, that looks amazing, Helen. It's so nice. And then we'll just finish with a couple of, if you're not on your back already, I think, yes, to be rounding this up, we'll finish with just a couple of simple twisty things on your back. So settle down, make sure you're going to be warm enough. And we will then finish where we started, with our knees bent and our feet standing on the floor. So we'll come to do the one where you've got your knees bent, your feet standing on the floor. You're tilting your knees to the right and to the left. That's a movement we did right at the beginning of class. And just see how that feels. And you can just take that on to one other thing, which is to take your feet wider. So they're as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And then let your knees tilt from side to side with your feet wider. And you might then like to take your knees all the way down to one side for a couple of breaths. And do that on both sides, obviously. Good. I'm not sure where the time's gone this morning. And when you've done that on both sides, just settle down onto your backs with your legs long or your knees bent, whichever is more comfortable. And if you like, a couple of big sighing breaths. And I think next week, hopefully, it's a long time away, we'll carry on our sort of exploration with the breathing. But right now, let's, if it's comfortable for you, finish by bringing your hands to rest on the front of your body and using that contact of your hands to gather your awareness into. So resting with the hands somewhere on the front of your body and feeling your body responding to the movement of your breath. I'm going to ring the singing bowl, as some of you I know have to whiz off, but if you've got time to just lie for a few more breaths, then please do so. I'll ring the bowl again in a moment. So I'm going to ring the bowl for a second time in a moment. Just where you're lying, just gather your attention into your breathing in a very sort of natural, relaxed way. You're not doing anything to your breath. You're just aware of the flow of the in and the out breath through your body. So of course you can carry on staying lying down longer if you like. Well, that will be very nice. Thank you everyone so much. Bye. I'm gonna do unmute yourselves if you want, but we have